Well, hello and welcome to the stream. Let's go ahead and see what we can get into. I'm going to do a little bit of John Lear with Art Bell. This came on Coast to Coast AM on March the 21st of 2004.
From the high desert in the great American Southwest, I'm Joel City, and according to that moon, we're going to be able to go through the time zones, recording them all with this program called Coast to Coast AM. I'm Art Bell. It's an honor to be here with you tonight. As it is an honor to have a guest that I've got coming up right away. That way, we'll go from back and to get some phone calls in. This is an extraordinary man we're about to hear from. His name is John Lear. He's the son of the daddy of the Learjet. You know, the Learjet, right? We're going to hear about some of this, right? And all kinds of topics that you're not expecting. As early as pointed out, and I'll tell you this story, I'll tell you the truth. Back when I was doing medical talk shows, 10 years ago, something like that, I ventured forth off Las Vegas. You know, everybody talks about this all the time, and I can't do it for another 5 hours tonight. I used to do a 5, even a 6-hour show. Six last week, and I've got to talk about something else. This is driving me crazy. And so that's how all of this got started. John is how it all got started. I interviewed John Lear, and the audience just totally went berserk. I mean, John's been investigating ethology probably longer than any ethologist I know. John's been there a long, long time, out and back again. I mean, he worked for, well, he'll tell you all about this, but, you know, he flew big jets. And big jets. And for a long time, he couldn't talk. He was fired once because of his discussion and talk about UFOs. He lost some jobs because of that. And so, you know, even the hardiest learn after a while that you open your mouth and jeopardize your living. So you close your mouth for a while. He did for years, many years. John has not said a word. And we did a show here with John a few months ago, which was a smash hit. Well, expect no less tonight. He's really something. In a moment, John Lear. Here from Las Vegas, Nevada, is John Lear. John, welcome to the program.
Hi, Art. Special hello to my friends at the Fantastic Forum.
Now they know you're real. You know, the Forum Pirates, for a long time, some about it, John, that it really was your posting up there. All that can end now. You know, the last time you were on, John, you did the famous, I don't know, 10-minute, whatever it was, disclosure thing. I, of course, picked that off, and I began affectionately calling it the Lear test. And so every time I get an advocate for disclosure on here, I play it for them until finally so many of them had heard it that they already had their answer formulated, so I stopped. But you actually got everybody's attention with that. You know, I'm not reading your bio and what you're all about this time, so instead, let's turn around this time. You tell us about John Lear.
Okay, I grew up in Santa Monica, Pacific Palisades, but moved to Geneva, Switzerland when I was 12. And I went to the international school in Geneva for 2 months and went to a couple of boarding schools, one of which was in the Rose, which is the supposedly the School of Kings. I didn't make the king part. I moved back to St. Palisades and went to Chadwick boarding school in the 10th grade, and then University High, and then I graduated from Santa Monica High, and then moved back to Geneva, and then went back to Rose for college prep.
What was it that was taking your family to Switzerland?
My dad had a lot of electronic business and a lot of airplane electronics, but he wasn't too successful in selling to the American United States Airlines. And he went over to Europe to see if he could sell it to those airlines. One concept he developed and built was the automatic landing of airplanes. And the Caravelle, which was built by Sud Aviation in France, was the first airplane to land 00, and that had the Lear pilot. And of course, my dad sold that company in 1960.
What does land 00 mean?
No forward visibility and no ceiling. I mean, you can't see anything. The airplane just automatically lands itself and rolls out, and all the pilot has to do is put on the brake.
Was that the forerunner of ILS?
No, it used the ILS to do that.
Okay. All right, fascinating.
That's what was taking him back and forth and moving us back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Went back to Geneva in 1960 and went back to that boarding school, but I didn't like that too much. So I went to work for my dad and my brother, flying in Twin Beach that they had flying around for all these business deals. And then in June of 61, I was out, I had the Swiss aerobatic license, and I was out doing aerobatics. And I made a slight miscalculation and crashed. And I had pretty severe injuries. I broke both legs in 3 places. And
what did you crash in?
A bunker human. It's a Spanish-built German biplane. It was a beautiful biplane. Occasionally around, they're very rare biplanes, but it was my fault. You know, I screwed up, but we try and profit from our mistakes. I got a letter from General Jimmy Doolittle shortly after the accident, telling me about all the mistakes he had made, and all he did was, try and profit from his mistakes. I have that framed on my wall. It's a 2-page letter. In between it, I have a picture of him taking off the B-25 off the Keihak carrier to bomb Tokyo.
Wow.
Anyways, okay, I had the crash, and somehow I developed great gangrene in both my legs and wounds, and was sent to the Lovelace Clinic in August of 61. Now, Randy Lovelace, as you know, was a surgeon in 1947 at Lake Patterson Air Force Base, and the Air Force sent him back to Albuquerque, where he's from, to establish the Lovelace Clinic, and he did the original autopsies or some of the autopsies on the aliens that were recovered in Roswell. Randy Lovelace was on the board of Lear Incorporated, my dad's company, and Dad was on the board of the Lovelace Clinic. It was interesting how close I was to what was going on, but didn't have the slightest idea. Then I moved to, I recovered and moved to West Los Angeles and worked selling sheet metal bending, and then decided to go to the Art Center and study industrial design, which I did for about a year. Mm-hmm. Then went back to Geneva to see my girlfriend, and ended up getting married and going back to work for my dad in Wichita, Kansas, who was now building the Learjet. And I was director of PR, and I loved working on things, and I ended up working graveyard shift Bucky Rivets on the fuselage #1.
John, if you know, I mean, how did your dad just decide, well, I mean, where did it come from? We're going to build the Learjet. I mean, where did that come from?
He built the Lear Star, which was a twin-engine airplane Lodestar, Lockheed Lodestar, and he actually just modified the Lockheed Lodestar into an executive transport. And he made it go, 2 miles an hour faster, and it was very plush and everything. And they built about 62 of them, but there was a lot of crashes. And he got the idea to build a business jet in 1957 or 1958, and asked the board of directors for the money, and they wouldn't give it to him because of all the problems they had with the Lear Star. So he sold his stock in Lear Incorporated to Sealer. It became Lear Sealer, and he formed the Swiss American Aviation Company, to build the Lear jet, which was going to be built in Switzerland because he thought there was great engineers and lots of materials, and which he found out were wrong. He spent about 2 years in Altenrhein in Switzerland trying to get it going, but it just didn't work. And that's why I moved to Wichita, because there was engineers available, talent available to get the thing moving.
Well, sure moved.
Yeah, it did. And I went there, worked for PR, and worked in PR. And the first flight was in October 1963. I flew chase in our Cessna 320 Skyline, which of course couldn't keep up with the jet, but we got some pictures, and it was really an exciting time.
It must have been a lot of fun.
But I wanted to fly more, and I couldn't fly because I wasn't qualified as a test pilot, so I moved to Oklahoma, Florida, and worked as the editor for an aviation news magazine called Aero News, which we moved out to El Segundo in California. And that folded, and I went to work for as a flight instructor at Hawthorne Airport and then Van Nuys, and was finally hired at the Flying Tiger Line to fly their Learjet. And this is in 1964. There was another guy there, an old pilot that was actually the chief pilot of the executive division where I worked for. And in November of 65, he crashed with 7 people on board just outside of Palm Springs. And it was a really terrible accident. It was entirely his fault, not the airplane. But anyway, I ended up running that part of the executive.
So you flew the Learjet for how long, John?
Well, let's see. I got checked out in 64. So I haven't flown it recently, about that 40 years. I had 1,800 hours in the airplane, which is not a lot. There are Learjet pilots around. 15 and 20,000 hours worth.
So in all, I would imagine the executives that got to fly with you wouldn't have been exactly unhappy to hear that John Lear was flying their Lear.
You can say that.
Yeah, pretty cool.
And then on May 23rd, 1966, Hank Beard, who was chief of engineering flight test, Rick King, a factory pilot, Don Zimmerman, an NAA observer, and myself left Wichita Municipal Airport. And we flew around the world, setting the world's speed record. We made 17 stops. And the total lap time was 65 hours and 38 minutes.
Well, that kind of thing, John, has just got to be flat out fun. I know it works, but I mean really fun for everybody who loves flying. And I'm trying to set a world speed record. Yeah, that's right up there.
I had never been around the world. I knew a little bit about it. But it was exciting for me, and there's only 3 pilots, so you were either sleeping or flying, which was great. And we went to all these different places, and it was a really exciting flight.
I know you've lot of the Reno Air Show.
Excuse me?
You've been participating in the Reno Air Show a lot.
Yeah, in 1967, I raced the sport biplane class. In 1968, I raced the Douglas 26, which was a medium bomber, and it was the largest airplane ever raced at Reno. And I came in 5th out of 6 airplanes, having passed a North American P-51, at which point I understand that there was 3 fighter pilots that committed suicide off the back of a grandstand. Having a bomber pass the fighter, that is just a no-no.
Yes. Yeah, so all your life flying, really. Are you flying now? You're not, are you? How much do you miss it?
Not at all.
Oh, not at all, really?
I'm tired of it. It's a pain in the butt.
I thought that never left your blood, John.
No, I'm tired of worrying about the runway incursions. I'm tired about constant worry of altitude costs. I'm glad it's for younger guys, and I just don't think that fast anymore. And it's just a constant struggle not to mess up. So,
it's a gigantic jump from where we are right now to what we're going to talk about, and we need some kind of bridge. For those who are just tuning in tonight, and inevitably there are ladies and so audience, John, and they're not going to know your connection to ufology. In a nutshell, what is your connection to ufology? I mean, obviously you're a mainstream pilot, a test pilot, in aviation all your life. Where does ufology jump into the middle of that?
I was always kind of interested in it, but I didn't think it was real. As a matter of fact, there's a letter that circulates on the internet that John Andrews, who was the vice president of Testers Corporation and who made the F-117 stealth fighter, he and I used to communicate a lot. As a matter of fact, I'm the one that gave him the original information on the F-117. And we were talking about UFOs one day, and I said, forget it, John, it's not real. And that letter is somewhere on the internet. But what happened, I was interested in it, but it just didn't seem to be any evidence. I walked into a friend's house in I think it was 84, 85, and there was a book called Missing Time by Bud Hopkins. Oh, and that was, I read that book, and I knew that was real. I mean, it sent shivers up my spine, and that's what started everything. I was flying out of New York at the time, commuting to New York, and the first thing I did was call Bud Hopkins and go over to his place. It was kind of funny because I came off a transatlantic flight at JFK, and I had made an appointment to go to his apartment, and I showed up with my flight bag and a huge suitcase, and he said, what's going on here? How long do you think you're going to be staying? And I said, just like you did. I said, I just can't see you. I don't know the place to put this. I ended up staying a few hours and having dinner with him and his family, and actually going, he did an attempt to progression. He said, for this kind of interest that you have, there had to be something that, you have to be involved somehow. We didn't find anything then. And again, I have my suspicions, but that's what started it all. And then, boy, I just, it was so interesting, one lead after the other. And once let's see, that was 85, 86, 87, I had to have an operation on my foot. And while I was recovering, not flying, I got in my truck and drove around southwestern United States, interviewing, talking to people, who wouldn't talk on the phone. I got the famous Ernie Edwards there at Portland Air Force Base. So by then, you're really beginning to get interested. Yeah, I hooked up with Linda Howe and Albuquerque, and we drove together down to Roswell and met with Clifford Stone, and it was just a very interesting period. And how did Clifford impress you, by the way? Very spooky. I mean, I walked into, I had known him, walked into his house there, and at that time, he looked out the back and said, see that black car? And this black car sped away. He said, they've always got me under surveillance. And just, little things like that happening all the time. So, there wasn't anything direct through. I mean, all those years flying, and you never saw anything. Only once that I remember much later, and that was 1966. I was making a long, leisurely afternoon descent into Los Angeles from back east, and over Palm Springs. It started my descent out of 41,000, and I guess I was like 35 or 34,000 descending, and I'm going westbound from left to right. This object went in front of the airplane, and I just told the co-pilot, said, look, it's an M2F2, the landing body, right? And only years later, I mean, that was 66, maybe 25 years later, and I realized how ridiculous that was to think that an M2F2 would be going across the major flight path into Los Angeles. And when I think about it, I said, what could I have possibly been thinking? I actually got on the ground and called Hank Baird, who was chief of engineering flight test, and said, get me the casualty marking. I saw an M2F2 today. So that was the one thing I saw. The only thing I saw until I was on out in the desert and saw the sponsor group light. You're going to be commenting on a lot of things tonight that I don't see how you could know unless you had, I don't know, John, a dialogue of some sort with extraterrestrials. I mean, some of this stuff, how are you going to know it? I mean, I suppose we'll get to that as we go through it, but it seems like you would have to have, almost first-hand knowledge of the aliens, their intent, their motivations, what they're all about, to know some of this interesting, but I don't know of any indeed
You don't know of any ETs?
Well, I know of ETs. I don't know any personally.
Oh, okay. For example, we're going to discuss mankind being an experiment. That's knowledge that. Well, how did you come to know this? I don't know that.
Well, first of all, on this, you have to cut to the chase right from the beginning. Understand what's going on. You have to understand that in the beginning, the moon did not spring forth from its physical. The moon was not passing by Earth and captured by its gravity and locked into rotational lock. In the beginning, the moon was towed here from somewhere else and placed by a very large machine into orbit around the Earth in rotational lock.
Okay, so that's a really good one right there, and an example of exactly what I'm talking about. That's sort of a creation-like statement, isn't it? How the moon got here. Didn't bounce out of the Pacific. They don't match up. It was towed here. Towed here. That's a very creation-like statement, isn't it? So in a moment, we'll ask where that knowledge comes from. And I like toll free 800-893-0903 from coast to coast and worldwide on the internet. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Here. That's a great feeling. We're going to explore something here. Of course, one is all the Lear jet. Right now, in the middle of the night, Coast to Coast AM underway. Lestrade here. John, okay, back on. That's a heck of a thing to say. No, Lestrade here. And it implies, I guess what I'd like to know is, how have you come to believe this to be so?
Okay, let me back up just a second and talk about the experiment. When Sarah looked at the kind of depth side, he read documents that mankind is an experiment, and that religions were created by the people who were making the experiment to give us a set of rules and regulations to live by, the Ten Commandments, the Quran, so we wouldn't harm ourselves during this experiment.
Oh, okay. So, this came from, this information that came from what Bob read at Area 51.
That was what started me on figuring out the experiment. Then I read when both Democritus and Anaxagoras taught that there was a time when the earth was without food. Aristotle also taught that. He taught that Arcadia Greece, before being inhabited by the Hellenes, had a population of Aborigines that occupied the land before there was a moon in the sky above the earth. And for this reason, they were called the Proselytes. Then there was a time when there was two moons, and of course now there's only one.
Mm-hmm.
So that started me if there was in recorded history of man, there was a time when there was no morning. So then I read the book Remakers of Saturn, and Norman Berglund started talking about the machines big enough to put the moon into orbit around the Earth.
But anyway, presumably then, our government is well aware through whatever means they had to get this information, extraterrestrial bodies, contact, all the rest of it. Somehow, our government is fully aware of what the humans are. We're an experiment.
But they have to know all that yet. And when you say government, it's not congressmen and senators and government that you can see. It's the other guys.
The other government, the secret government. And you believe that the secret government manipulates this information. It's not shared with our politicians. It's shared perhaps with some presidents to some degree or not.
No, not with presidents.
Not with presidents.
As we discussed before on the levels of security clearances, as far as I know, there's 38 levels above top secret. Now, the first 28 are top secret crypto. And the last 10 are names like Cobra, Ultra, the top one being Majestic. Now, the President of the United States has like top secret crypto 17. He doesn't get to know very much for two reasons. Number one, as the intelligence community has always hated elected or appointed officials, and they don't vet them. And number two, there's no reason for him to know. He's in office for over 8 years. He doesn't need to know that kind of stuff.
John, is the president aware that he does not hold the top security clearance?
No, everybody that has a clearance thinks the one he has is the top.
Well, just the top thing. That would absolutely make sense to me. And so to have knowledge of this, that mankind is an experiment, you would have to be at that top 10 level, majestic. So the whole majestic thing, the majestic papers that went around the web, around the world, with MJ phone, real?
Yes, and like I say, for the people who say, what's your source for that? My source, now passed away, was General James H. Doolittle. He was not an MJ-12 himself, but he was heavily right there in the middle of it all. He wrote a biography called I Could Never Be So Lucky, and I have never read a more honestly, brutally honest book. And I searched it for the slightest hint of what he was really involved in the later part of his life, but he wasn't there.
Well, can you tell us almost verbatim what the general told you? I mean,
You tell me. Now, here's how it happened. Now, when Moore came out, Moore and Chandler came out with those lifestyle reading papers.
yes,
I wanted to know whether it was real or not, and I knew I had to get the Chinese to do it. He was out in California, and I couldn't do it, but He and his wife Cheryl were very, very close to my grandmother and my grandfather and my mom and dad. Now, my grandmother and grandfather long since passed away. We're talking about 1989, 1990. But mom was still very much alive, and I approached her and I said, look, I need some information. I want to know if this is real. And she said, okay, well, how can I help you? I said, I need you to call Jimmy and just play it like this. Say, hi, Jimmy, this is William. What's going on? Haven't talked to you in a while. And then say, Jimmy, John has gotten something involved in something, and I'm not too excited about it, but I need to know one thing. Yes, the Majestic 12 real. Now, it took me about 3 or 4 months to get Ron to do that, but she finally worked up her courage and one morning called, and what he said was, yes, I am, but I can't say anything more about it. My mom's all right. She was a trooper. Wow, that's what did it for me, because everything hinged on those papers, are they real or not? And as far as I'm concerned, they were real.
So he confirmed it. The general confirmed it to you.
Right.
All right. What do you know? If we are an experiment, I guess I would like to know the nature of this experiment.
What do we all?
Yeah, as much as you do know. I mean, there must be a little more than we are an experiment. Nothing to order, nothing to.
From what Bob read was the experiment is with the soul. We are referred to as containers. Aliens refer to us as containers. That's all. Just containers. They didn't want the containers to hurt themselves while this experiment was going on. Now, I've given a lot of thought, and I cannot imagine what the experiment is.
Or whether it's succeeding or failing or still in judgment.
Correct.
Why do we need? Why is it decided on whether we need a moon? Anything on there?
Yes, and what happened is Richard Hoagland led me to this, because when I saw his tape about the Mars-Moon connection and talked about the lunar orbiter 384M photo showing the terror on the moon, directly in the center of the moon, inside his mid-eye, stretching 6 miles high, on a tripod, and a cube on top, a mile on each side, I wondered to myself, what could that be for? What could be an antenna that's, first of all, it's got to be an antenna, and it's pointed directly at Earth. Are they trying to record our TV programs? And I thought, no, that's unlikely. These people are millions of years ahead of us. Probably what they're doing is sending, transmitting, and receiving souls. When a person dies, they retract the soul into this machine. When a person is born, they send the soul or transmit the soul. And this has been going on for, however long that thing's been there.
Wow, so you're saying that's how souls get here, that's how souls are retrieved, they're actually received and transmitted from a virtual antenna on the moon. Oh, that's some concept, John. Wow. That's going to take a while to sink in. That's really something, John.
And that's why mariners are called lost souls, because if you die underwater, for some reason they can't retract the soul from underwater, and it's lost.
Frequency's not low enough, John. You can talk to subs and get the frequency low enough. Oh, that's a trip. All right. So then that's the transmitter and the receiver, but there must be a processing center. In other words, something that's driving that, or it's a tool of a larger machine, right?
Well, it could be. I think it's all part of that cube on top of the tripod. It sits on top of the tripod that receives and transmits the souls. Whether they're processed, I don't know. I know this is that we cannot take advantage of lessons we've learned in a previous lifetime, because that information is short-circuited. Now, some people can access that, but it's extremely rare. For some reason, we're not allowed to profit by the mistakes that our soul made in a previous lifetime.
Yes, it seems so unfair, but we don't understand the structure of it all because I've always thought that is so unfair. And if what you're saying is true, then that will explain some other things we're going to talk about. But you say nothing beyond. Richard Hogan has pointed out a number of very large structures on the moon. By the way, Richard's taken a lot of really big feet lately. I guess you're aware of that, huh?
Yeah, because no single person has done more to expose the NASA cover-up than Richard Hogan. And, they have various government guys out there that are really gunning for him. We have one on the Fantastic Forum. We call him Yankee Yo-Yo because all he does is badmouth Richard Hogan, and Richard Hogan's a good guy.
Richard is either somebody you love or hate. Speaking of the audience, when he's on, I love him or I hate him. There's no in between with Richard.
But he has inspired me. I mean, when I saw that video of the 84M, and people say, well, maybe he is, but he certainly has a lot of information, and I certainly have some disagreements with him. I don't go around that.
No, his passion is evident to all. I mean, detractors and fans alike, his passion is absolutely evident. And, I just finished him too. I've not seen a lot of the things that he has seen and tried to point out to me, to which he tells me I have two-dimensional vision, which I do. So he's an incredible man, and this means that these artifacts and the things he talked about, the things you're talking about, they really are on the moon. But that bubble is going to get burst pretty soon. If we're keeping it secret, it's not going to be a secret very much longer because, other countries are getting ready to go to the moon, John. Then what?
I doubt it'll happen.
Really? Really?
Well, there'll be something to, at this point, I'd like to tell you what heroes our astronauts are. These guys, the Apollo astronauts I'm talking specifically about.
Yes, sir.
These guys went to the moon, they saw all that stuff, and then they were told by NASA under the threat of, receipt of pension and everything else that they better not talk about it. And they, for the most part, all kept their mouths shut for, how long has it been, 35 years. And if you can just imagine yourself seeing something so astounding as all these structures on the moon and then being told you can't talk about it.
Okay, you know yourself, John, doing 4 hours on a radio program like this. You said so before the show, you're a little nervous. Everybody's nervous, but after a while, that goes away. And I interviewed Dr. Mitchell, actually many times, Dr. Mitchell. And the damnedest thing, I've got to say, John, a couple of hours, we were talking, I think Hoagland was there, as a matter of fact, and the Hoagland started talking about all the stuff that was on the moon, and then Hoagland said something like, I want you to tell me, being on the moon is an emotion, lifetime, incredible experience. Describe your emotions and your thoughts when you were walking on the moon. And there was a long pause. And Dr. Mitchell came back and she said, it's really strange. And now I'm paraphrasing, but I'm very close. It's really strange. I should remember everything in such stark detail. But my memory of what I felt and what I was seeing, it's all kind of foggy. And I don't remember how I felt. And I thought, whoa, was that a weird response?
Yeah, that's what he said in his book. And then there was another astronaut when he was asked the same question. He said, you know what? All I can think is a pair of black shiny shoes. That's what the psychological programming comes from. And I had the privilege once of talking with a lady who helped with the psychological programming. She worked for NASA. And she told me how they did it and the problems they had with the astronauts.
Neil Armstrong, every time he gets in front of the public, he makes some he dropped some.
Yeah, when you say when he gets in front of the public, that's only been what, 3 times?
Not very often, but when he does, he says something that makes everybody go, oh, holy smokes, what does he mean by that?
I think Neil dealt with it by saying, if I can't tell him the truth, I'm not going to tell him anything.
And then there were the other astronauts who had endless trouble, marital troubles, all kinds of different, obvious psychological, big-time stress of some kind. So you're saying they saw all this, they know all this,
They know all.
Do you think it was explained to them when they got back as part of the debriefing, John, what they saw?
No, I think that what they did was, you saw that? Really? Now, did the other guys see it? I think they treated them as, little kids, or maybe a little bit crazy. It was part of the plan to keep things secret. In other words, when they went, they didn't tell them, you're going to see debriefing structures, so you got to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, I'm just a touch on this. When I hear an answer like that from Mitchell, I go, that's not possible. You were on the moon. You were there. You had your feet on the moon. You walked on the moon. You have to know what it felt like and what it was in your surroundings. It can't all be sort of a weird memory for you. It just can't be. It can't be. It's the biggest event of your life. And a lot of lines on print. You have to remember it. But no. That's too bizarre. So, anyway, maybe you're on to it. Maybe they did see all of this, and maybe they were programmed out of it. And you know that this antenna is a transmitter of souls, both sending the new ones and receiving the ones that expire.
Right. And you remember a year and a half ago at the Rio Air Races, an astronaut decked a Japanese reporter that came up and said, hey, you guys didn't go to the moon, that's all BS.
Yeah, put them on the ground.
Okay, the reason he did, in my opinion, is the fact that it's not that they didn't go to the moon, it's that they did go to the moon and what they found there. And it was so troubling now to be accused that they didn't go when they did go, and now they've been keeping the secret for all these years of what there was up there. You can imagine how troubling that would be.
What do you think they were told, John, in the end, to force them to keep that secret? Do you think they were told part of what was in what I call the Lear test?
No, I just think they were said that you can't do it. That's all it is.
That wouldn't be enough. You would have to say it's enough to an astronaut. This is such a magnificent thing to withhold from mankind that not only are ETs here, but ETs are on the moon. The evidence is real close by, relatively. And this for mankind is like the biggest thing there could possibly be. So you've got to give someone a pretty good reason to talk about that.
Yes.
A pretty good reason other than, no, you can't talk about that. You got to do better than that. It's like mankind isn't ready for this information, can't know this information.
Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Maybe that's what they did. I talked with this.
We're at a break point. Can you hold on? All right, good. We've got plenty of time. John Lear.
The eagle flies, rode his wings across open skies, kissed the sun, touched the moon, what he let me run.
Yes, but he's really done all that. He really seen all that and touched the moon. What you mean, Lord?
Lady bird, come on down, I'm here waiting on the ground. Lady bird, I'll treat you good, lady bird, I'll wish you good. Lady bird, pretty lady bird.
To talk with Art Bell, call the Wild Card line at area code 775-727-1295. The first time caller line is area code 775-727-1222. To talk with Art Bell from the east of the Rockies, call toll free at 800-825-5033. From west of the Rockies, call 800-618-8255. International callers may reach Art by calling your in-country Sprint access number, pressing option 5, and dialing toll-free 800-893-0903. From coast to coast and worldwide on the internet, this is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
Mankind and experiments. That's interesting. Can you completely deny the possibility of the possibilities? And there is one, that, think about it. We are an experiment. And I know I've got a soul because that sax things right here. Be right back. Once again, here's John Lear. All right, John. A lot of questions from the audience, and here's kind of an interesting one from Morgan in Clearwater, Florida. Ask John if a lot of ghosts from Earth are here by their choice as souls because they know not to go to the light after they die, or should I go to the light? Please ask him. Same old question, John. If there is a receiver and transmitter, then perhaps a light that people see, and that trip may begin to take is a child on the road.
Yeah, it's going to the moon. I'm trying to remember the remote fuel on McGonagall. Have you interviewed him at all?
You bet, Joe McGonagall.
Yeah, Joe. Okay, in his book, he said he was tasked once to follow somebody who had died in a car accident south of San Francisco. And he found him and followed him. And as he was headed towards the moon, and as the person got closer and closer to the moon, there was something wrapping around him, and something was saying to McGonagall, "You cannot come here. This is not your place. You can go anywhere else, but you can't come here." And it got to the point where McGonagall broke off because he felt his very life threatened.
That's fascinating. I don't remember, Joe. Of course, maybe I just didn't ask the right question. But other than Ed Dames and maybe one or two others that I can think of, most of our viewers won't do that kind of thing, John. They, or either that, or they don't publicly want to talk about it.
I definitely read it. I thought it was McGonagall, but it could have been another of the remote viewers. I remember there was one came to Las Vegas, but that incident did happen, and that's another thing that tipped me off that the souls were going to.
So, you don't think we're going back in, and you don't think anybody else is going?
No, it's a secret. It has to be kept. Part of it, if you were the government and you knew the secret and you knew the experiment, and part of the experiment is not knowing that it's an experiment.
That's why this Evans conference is coming up. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, X conference.
Yeah.
What is
The Evans conference in Washington, D.C.
Hey, I guess I'm behind the times. What is this, another disclosure thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Big disclosure thing. And all the UFO guys are going to talk this through to, and they're going to influence Congress and Senate. It's not going to happen for the simple fact that, they're talking to people who have nothing to do with the cover-up. You take a senator or a congressman, and even if they got interested, let's say that they were high level and had a lot of seniority, do you think they're going to risk any of their seniority to bring something like UFO to the forefront? Do you think that they're going to hold hearings? Of course not. And even if they did, somebody would approach them and say, let's say you were a senator, or and he comes and says, Art, look, this UFO thing, I think that, it needs to be investigated by the guy I work for, and the guy who gives you your clearance as a as a senator, so that you can learn all, the secret stuff that you know about. He thinks it's all wacko. So, we have to appease him. Now, personally, I think, there should be an investigation, but at this point in your career, I don't think you can afford to irritate my boss because you got your clearance. That's the kind of thing that would happen. If anybody got any close to doing an investigation on the UFO cover-up, and I know Steve Bassett has very good intentions, but there is no way that anything is going to happen.
Well, John, I can tell this. I know some pretty powerful people who I'm not going to name, but you know them. And they have made some really big behind-the-scenes moves to get an investigation going on UFOs. I mean, right into the right places. I wish I could name the names, and someday maybe I will, not tonight. And every time they get very close, some little hitch develops, and it doesn't get done. Simple as that. I mean, right up to the congressional Senate level. I'm talking time. That's true. I know that for a fact. Absolutely. It's not going to happen. So they can hold conferences they want. It's not going to change anything. But again, like Richard, who I don't always agree with, Dr. Lear, for example, his intentions are awfully good. Awfully good. But I honestly have concerns that he'll ever get anywhere with it. I guess just the same way you do. I think that and by the way, Dr. Lear was one of the ones I played with the Lear test for. And, he actually, very quickly after, if I recall correctly, said, well, when I said, if all of that was true, Dr. Woodward, still go for disclosure. Of course not. All of that's not true. Right. Let's see what I said. Back to the light for a moment. We never answered Paul Morgan's question here. This is a tough one, Morgan. Now we're asking John Lear's opinion about whether, go to the light or not.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Well, now remember, it was Whitney Streamer that told me that story, and I related it to you. I didn't come up with that myself.
Okay.
Are you asking, am I going to go to the white light?
Yeah, would you go to the light or would you go to the dark? That's a question for you.
Well, I don't know. If I had to go tonight, I'd probably go to the white light because I miss some of my friends. And I want to go back to, where everybody else goes and you see all your friends for a few minutes and they get sent back to her.
So you think that there'd be, that all your friends are in the right place? Or is it the only, it's a whole Might as well slam it right here. Is the whole concept of heaven and hell, as we understand them biblically, nothing more than a myth?
I don't know.
If there's a machine on the moon doing the soul extraction and placement, and that's a careful statement. I don't know.
Certainly, we could, the story that Whitley Strieber told about being in the box was hell. That's remember that story?
I do.
That was the most frightening thing that had ever happened to them and they could ever imagine. And I don't remember exactly how the story went, but I think his soul was that little teeny box.
Yes.
Trapped there for a while.
Yes. Yeah, that would seem hell. So you wouldn't, I mean, even with all the knowledge that you have, I assume that you are from time to time invited to these kinds of conferences, aren't you?
Yeah, but I never go.
You sort of, there was a point where you threw your hands up with all of this and you said, well, I've learned all there is to learn about the whole ET question and UFOs and I'm done.
No, not that I hadn't learned all there was to know,
or all you wanted to know,
or wanted to know. It was just, I could see it was, there was no point going to a conference because these people were just, preaching to each other. And when I first got into this, I could pull everybody up to where I was because I didn't know that much and I had all the documents. This is what so-and-so wrote. This is what, so here's a copy of the documents. Here's the receipt for it. And I can bring them up to that level. But I kept going, get more information. And what was it they used to say? That Lear leaps in logic was what they used to accuse me of. And, it's just, they were leaps in logic, but they turned out to be true. So, I was getting further ahead of everybody with information. It was too hard to sit down with somebody and bring them up to speed.
So let's come back to this machine learning again. It's pretty interesting, and you believe now that it accounts for some things on Earth. In other words, you already said the machine wasn't perfect. And for example, mariners lost at sea. That machine can't retrieve that soul because it's beneath a very great deal of water, which it apparently cannot penetrate.
Even a little bit of water.
Even a little bit of water.
Oh, yeah.
This machine may be imperfect in other ways, or it may be by design. How can we know?
Either imperfect or by design. But what's going on with this whole question of homosexuality and what we call the gay question is apparently either by design or the machine is breaking down. What's going on is predominantly male souls are being transmitted to females, and predominantly female souls are being transmitted to males. Now, whether that's by design or it's breaking down or whatever, that's what's causing this increase, a remarkable increase in homosexuality.
Some suggest there really is not an increase, that it's just more people are not afraid to be out of the closet.
That could very well be.
So we can't know whether it's by design or whether it's just a simple mistake.
Correct.
Either way, you're actually seeing cross-matched souls.
That's what's happening.
How did you know that the same way you know about the fact that we're an experiment?
Well, you just figure it out. Take the facts and figure it out. I mean, nobody has to tell you that.
Yeah, I guess not. I mean, if you accept one, then why not the other?
It's the old Occam's razor. Which is the more plausible? Did the moon emerge from the Pacific Ocean and go out there and establish itself in perfect rotational lock? I don't think so. Did it cruise along and get caught by Earth's gravitational pull and establish itself in perfect rotational lock? I don't think so. There has to be another reason. And that's because somebody towed it there and put it into rotation.
And so you believe it was put there for the specific purpose of engendering this experiment. That's what I think. That others make us co-creation. Where do you think, John, that the Bible fits into all of this? I mean, the Bible has a very specific way it describes our creation that most Christians buy into. How did that come to pass, do you think, in the scheme of all this?
Well, I think it's all part of the rules and regulations, so we won't hurt ourselves. And somebody on the Fantastic Forum mentioned that, well, it certainly isn't doing a very good job, and I have to agree with that, but apparently that was the intent.
Well, we've been warring quite a bit, killing each other with regularity.
Yeah, but we've been killing ourselves for God, right?
Yeah, we always, when we have wars, of course, we always, all of us hold the book and God's name out in front of the battle. There's no question about it. You know, always in God's name. You know, wars always on both sides. So that's true. That's part of the plan, do you think, John?
You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Back to Richard Hoagland for a moment. He is, of course, taking big time hits right now. How much of what Richard says do you buy, or in what areas do you disagree with him?
The area I disagree is a couple of weeks ago he was on some program and I heard something about he was discussing the problems we were having with Spirit Rover, and he mentioned that there may be a group that could hijack NASA's antenna and send spurious signals to Mars. That is absolute BS. NASA is doing those spurious signals. They're the ones that are creating the problems. Those signals first go to Canberra, then I think they go to Pine Gap, and then I thought I saw a diagram where they went into Northern California and then back down to JPL. But whatever the scenario, those signals and photographs and everything are tampered with and made just like they want before they get to JPL. Now, the problem with Richard is he knows those guys and what a great team they are, and they are. They have no idea that those signals are being tampered before they get to JPL.
Hey, John, if you were seeing untampered with photographs, what would they be seeing?
Well, I know Spirit Rover is allegedly now that much more. I'd like to see it go down to Tithonia. I'd like to see it to go to Sidonia. I'd like to see it go to that monument that McMonagle visited when they took him to the 7 coordinate points on Mars. He thought it was on Earth, and he saw all this weird stuff. And then in the debriefing, they told him, no, that was Mars. So, my gosh, you know, and he saw these things. And what was so interesting about the book is somehow somebody had sent me those exact 8 photographs, like about maybe 8 years before. And I pulled them out. I go, I wonder if these are the same ones. And they were the same ones of the places he went. And there's one of the places he went on Mars that has a huge type Washington monument, but only much bigger. And, you know, I like to see Spirit Rover go there.
You know what NASA says, John? They say, you know, if any of the stuff that Hoagland talks about or others wish was really there, that we would go, look, we'd release the photographs and we'd get funding we never dreamed about for a manned mission to Mars. The whole world would want to investigate the possibility of a civilization or life, intelligent life ever having been on Mars. It would be the best thing that ever happened to NASA. Keep it quiet, not in a million years. That's what they say.
Good story. But what they really do is they seek out government disinformation artists by, first of all, they have to have a PhD and be extremely knowledgeable on many subjects. Then they have to be extremely well spoken. Then they have to exude confidence and congeniality. And when they mix with the public, they do exactly what you just said. Oh, and Fagan used to do the same thing. Oh gosh, wouldn't it be just, it would be great if we could just be an alien. But no, the facts are
it's a good story. I mean, it's a good story.
It's a great story. I mean, but those are not what's going on.
Do you think they know that? Do you think that the NASA guys that are saying these things know that? Really? I mean, Richard says that the lower level technicians below the very top, they don't know any of this. Their consoles during work, they don't see anything tampered with or any of the rest of that. They're good, faithful employees. And even the PR guys,
Yeah, usually they don't know. And I told you the story when Bob and I went down to Los Angeles to meet with the head of Viking Imaging. And I forget his name. I keep ready to look it up, but I don't know whatever it was. He was head of Viking Imaging. And what Bob had seen on the test site was close-ups of the pyramids in Cydonia. And he saw doors and windows, and obviously somebody lived there. So we went down to pick up Bob's race car. And while we were there, we drove over to the JPO, and we walked up to see this guy. I wish I could remember his name. And we sat down and talked with him.
I'll tell you what, we're at a break point, John. You may think of this later going break. We'll be right back now. We'll be right back. Middle of the night. Yes, 2 a.m. actually. I got it. In the middle of the night, this is Coast to Coast AM. To talk with Art Bell, call the wildcard line at area code 775-727-1225. The first-time caller line is area code 775-727-1222. To talk with Art Bell for East of the Rockies, call toll-free at 800-825-5033. From West of the Rockies, call Art at 800-618-8255. International callers may reach Art Bell by calling your in-country Sprint access number, pressing option 5, and dialing toll-free 800-893-0903. From coast to coast and worldwide on the internet, this is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
When considering the manner of our creation and maintenance,
This isn't any crazier than listening to a lot of other renditions of the way it happened. Not really. Any of them you listen to are fantastic, beyond me, hard to grasp, hard to consider, and rejected by many. I understand that. But we are, mankind is an experiment. There's something on the moon that literally controls, transmits, transports our souls, and that we need our flesh. It's just the container, that's all. Once again, scientist John Lear. He's had lots of secret documents. I don't know. He's certainly got information confirming what these documents say from very high places. For example, General Doolittle. But we're often just some wild country here. We were talking about NASA and how they and what they say, and certainly a good story. I mean, it does seem to me, John, as though, gosh, if they had something like that, they'd have all the money they needed to go investigate and all the rest of it. But you're suggesting that at a higher level, they already know and have known for a long time what's there and what it means to humanity, and we can't be told about it.
And before I answer that, Art, I just want to tell you that that boy at the Fantastic Forum says hello. Now, as to what NASA knows, they know everything. I mean, they know Venus is a normal planet like Earth. It doesn't have all that glowing hot molten lava and 90 bars of pressure, and it's ridiculous. They know everything on that's on the moon. They know Mars. For all I know, and I certainly at one time did think that we already had some kind of a base on Mars, and the reason I thought that is I was going to get to talk to somebody who went there. Now, when you go either to the moon or these supposed bases we have on the moon or Mars, it's a one-way trip. You cannot come back because they don't want any chance of anybody finding out about it. And for some reason, this guy had come back, and I was going to get a chance to talk to him. He lived in, I think, south of San Francisco somewhere. And we got right down to where I was going to get to meet this guy, and then all of a sudden, called the number, and it was a nut. Although it was the same number, we had been using, now it changed. There was a family using that number, and they said they had it for 15 years, and so on and so on. But they know all that stuff. They know, for instance, the spaceships in the rings of Saturn.
Yes.
Now, the other day, Yankee Elio posted a story with this message, and it's a continuing assault on Richard Hoagland. He says to the Fantastic Forum, "Hey, you guys, did you hear that Richard Hoagland thinks there's a UFO ticking and purring in the rings of Saturn?" So I wrote back that if Richard Hoagland said this, then it was confirmed by Norman Berggren in his book, The Ringmakers of Saturn, published in 1986. Now, before I tell you what Berggren said, let me read you a small portion of his bona fides. This is Norman Berggren. USME Cornell, LLB LaSalle, postgraduate studies Stanford, U.S. Navy 44 to 46. Thermodynamics with Douglas Aircraft, Aero Research Scientist with NACA Ames Laboratories. Supervisor, Flight Test Manager, Flight Test Analysis Manager, Test Plans Manager, Reentrance, Test Operations Staff Scientist, Satellite Systems, Lockheed Space Company. It goes on and on and on. So here's what Norman Berggren had to say in the preface of his book about the UFO that is ticking and purring in the rings of Saturn, and I quote, "Presented herein are pictures of an immensely large, enormously powerful extraterrestrial space vehicle located in the vicinity of Saturn and its moons. These photographic revelations are reinforced by and are consistent with scientific data extending over centuries as far back as Galileo. The pictures have been obtained by the author using simple, repeatable enhancement techniques applied to publicly available NASA photos of Voyager 1 and 2 flybys of Saturn. Having been obtained by pre-scheduled flight programming, Voyager photographs are scientifically unique in that they are strictly impersonal. End of quote. Now, the size of the largest of the vehicles is shown in plate 27, page 50, as 31,496 miles in length and 2,422 miles in diameter. Nowhere in the book is it said that the object is ticking or purring. Now, we're talking about a fairly large spacecraft here.
Yes.
Now, NASA knows that.
NASA knows that. And then, John, what is our present space program? Even though since we went to the moon, we've laid back and we haven't left with man low in orbit. Haven't done it. But we have sent out probes. We've sent what we just sent to Mars and deeper space probes. Is all of this a ruse?
All PR.
It's all PR.
Yeah. That's an opinion. I can't prove that. In my opinion, it's all PR.
Because they already know what's there, and moreover, if we should have to get a photograph or evidence of something that they're trying to hide, then that has to be covered up.
Look at how ridiculous is it, that Spirit Rover didn't go to Cydonia or Tithonia or the monument. Now, I know that the standard answer is, well, we've got 4 more important things to look at than,
That's what they say.
But here at Tithonia, in the Tithonia Chasma, on the west side of the Valley Marineris, you can go to Project Red Star on the web.com and see the city yourself. And not only that, you can go to Mellon Space Science Systems on the website. He's the guy that, is in charge of all the pictures coming over Mars, right? And go to this one Mars picture, and I'll give you the address of it. You can pull it down yourself, and you can put it in Photoshop 7, and you can magnify it and see the city yourself.
I have seen a couple of photographs that Richard showed me that made me gasp. That showed, without question in my mind, underground cities. Now, even Richard somebody questions the authenticity of the photograph, or at least, he's not certain. But when I saw that, I did gasp, and I did say, "Oh my God, that was a city. It was a city. There's no question about it. If that photograph is authentic, it's a city. I saw that with my own eyes."
Yeah.
So then all this is a ruse, and it's just a sort of a minimal effort, and we're not going to put man back up, or will the day come when we will be admitted to some further next step?
No, they'll be cleaning out the Petri dish shortly. I don't think we're going to be going anywhere.
You think so?
Except for the moon. This is just opinion,
But it must be opinion based on something. In other words, you think the experiment may not be going so well.
Well, it's not that it's not going so well. People are, becoming aware of who's running the experiment. And I don't think the experiment is valid if we begin to question whether or not there is a, quote, God. And so it might be time to clean out the Petri dish and start over again. And according to records, apparently every, 25,000 years, the earth is cleansed.
Yes.
And they start over again.
And you think we're pretty close?
Well, who knows?
Something you were going to say about the Naval Observatory in Washington?
Yeah, I was going to tell you that story that I was back in 1990, my daughter and her husband, and it was on Forces Day, and we were headed out to the Air Force Base. What is it, Andrews?
Yes.
And we were driving down the street, and we went right by the Naval Observatory, where the vice president lives.
Sure.
And it said open house. So I swerved in there. I said, hey, this is going to be interesting. Let's go in here. So we went in there and parked, and all the scientists were dressed up as famous figures in astronomy history. There was Galileo and Giordano Bruno, and they all had this little stick, this little thing where they recite a little bit of history. So I'm talking to this one scientist, and I said, well, listen, how fast, what is there a speed to gravity? And he says, well, we think it's, about speed of light. And I said, well, isn't it true that gravity is instantaneous between all planets? And actually, there's 2 gravities, gravity A and gravity B. And this guy had a Pepsi can in his hand, and he squeezed it so hard, he drew blood. And I had my daughter and her husband watching this. So we walked around, looked at some of the the exhibits, and then the head of the Naval Observatory was out there getting pictures taken with everybody, and the family would take a picture.
Yes.
And I walked up and said, "Can I get a picture?" He said, "Absolutely not." He walked away.
Oh, really?
Then shortly after that,
Maybe he had just treated the poor guy who wounded himself with a Pepsi can.
shortly after that, there's this photographer doing leaps and bounds to take pictures of me as we're walking towards the parking lot. I mean, it was comical. My daughter says, "Dad, what's that guy doing?" And he was hiding behind trees, the camera out.
Yeah.
And it was just a very odd experience. I don't think I'd ever told you that.
No, it is odd. And you think he crushed that Pepsi can because
He knew I was speaking the truth.
gravity A and gravity B.
You want to say that's gravity. Gravity A is on an atomic scale. Gravity B is the gravity that holds you on the Earth and the Earth, orbit around the sun and that type of deal. Gravity A works on an atomic scale, and it's what's currently known as the strong force.
Most theoretical physicists really have a hard time trying to explain gravity at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like science understands gravity all that well at all.
Yeah, they have a hard time with it, and they also have a hard time that it's immediate. But the story I told you that many years ago, that once the time that Bob came back from S4, and he told me about a gigantic weapon that we had, a weapon that was so powerful that it could destroy a continent half the size of South America. And he said that a message was sent to the owners of the Gray, and we established they live more than 1,000 light years away. The people who made the Grays. The message was sent to them: "You need to help us get rid of the Grays, or nobody's going to have Earth," meaning we blow ourselves up. And I said, "Well, now, what good is that going to do? Because, if they're over 1,000 light years away, it's going to be 2,000 light years before we get an answer." And he said, no, they use a gravity phone. Gravity is instantaneous. If you hook up a phone to it, you can call hundreds of light years away instantaneously.
That's a fascinating concept. Gravity is instantaneous. Well, we know the speed of light, but gravity is instantaneous.
We have no way to measure that. That's why we don't know how fast gravity propagates.
There wouldn't be a way to measure that, would there?
No.
Right. So the speed of gravity, you can't even say it has a speed, it's instantaneous. That's fascinating. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that before, nor even speak of the speed of gravity, since we don't understand it. But what concept that it's instantaneous, as in it always is, always was, and always will be. So it's always there. But there is a speed to it, you're suggesting, some sort of speed, and for the human mind has a hard time wrapping around that one.
Yeah, like 400 years ago when we thought the Earth was flat, and they were trying to convince, the population that was round, and they say it's not round, we fall out. Something ridiculous.
So then gravity ultimately perhaps would be not just instantaneous communication, but instantaneous travel as well.
That's the gravity wave that they use to travel. And the leaps that they make, according to what Bob said, I think it's every 12 milliseconds. That gravity amplifier recycles every 12 milliseconds. So however far they can travel in one leap, they can do that in an hour, 12 milliseconds, divided by 60.
Do you have any idea of how a gravity amplifier would even work? The basic concept behind it?
Well, the basic concept behind it is they use the gravity A wave, which they extract from the 115, they pump protons into that, it goes up to 116, there's an instantaneous decay, and when it decays, it throws off any matter in the gravity A wave. Somehow they harness gravity A wave through the 3 gravity amplifiers in the bottom of the craft, And these things focus on a point in space. Like I said, I don't know how far that point is. And they pull space toward them. Now we think of space as nothing, containing maybe 100 nano per square meter. But in fact, space is a fabric that can be pulled or warped. And with these gravity, if you exercise enough gravity, you can actually pull that space towards you, wrap it around your craft, and then turn it off, and you're that length away.
All of this is possible through element 116, right?
Through 115.
Oh, 115. John, it was either after I had you on last, I think it was, or perhaps Bob's last appearance, but there was a scientific article that they had just for some incredible short instant actually synthesized element 115. And I went, and so did a lot of the audience out there because I got a lot of emails. Wow, there it is, element 115.
Yeah, and Bob made a comment, I think, to Linda about how they would like to know more about it. I sent him as much information as I had about it, and he hasn't commented, but he said he would like to know the exact makeup, because apparently the 115 that they synthesized was unstable, and the 115 that he and I held in our hands was certainly stable. It was, I think it was 238 grams in the arrowhead shape, and I don't know why I told you this. I visited Bob a few months ago in Albuquerque, and we're out working in his garage, and the half-scale gravity amplifier that Joe Benedetti had built was sitting there in disarray, and Bob said, "You want this?" I said, "Are you kidding? I've wanted that thing for 15 years per year." And I got the half-scale gravity amplifier, and it, comes with a base and the little half sphere. And inside is the little holder for the 115 and the little tube that pumps the 115 into the pumps the protons into the 115.
And you've got this? You've got this now?
Yeah, I got it in my office. I got it right now. I'm running it in my den. And, it's just a half-scale replica, obviously. It doesn't work, but it's really neat to have, and it's really neat he gave it to me. And I got it there. I'm looking at it right now across my desk. It's in a glass cabinet, and behind it is the original drawing that Bob made for me when he came back and showed me how the saucers worked, how the 115, how they pump the protons into the 115, pumped it up to 116. It instantaneously decayed, threw off the antimatter, which was mixed with matter, and a thermionic generator created heat, which they turned into use for voltage to power the craft, and the gravity A-wave, which they used to travel in, and the original drawing is framed behind a little replica amplifier.
Boy, what a concept. All right, hold on, John, we're at the top there. So gravity is instantaneous. I mean, just try during the break to grasp mentally the concept of instantaneous and what that means. Really means it was always, is now, and always will be in any way. That would have to be something of the nature of instantaneous, wouldn't it? And that you can use it to communicate, and then perhaps go from point A to point B really quick. This is Coast to Coast, and the nighttime. He's got the bugs and then he's gonna give the blues and the one night stands and then it's settled down. He's quiet Also, wildcard line, area code 775-775. The first time line area code 775-775-22. Between North Side Bell, Rocky, all toll free at 800-855-1033. From Eastern Rocky, calling number 618-2255. International callers must be charged by calling for in-country access number. Pricing option 5. And dialing toll free 800-893-0503. From coast to coast and worldwide on the internet. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. It's any topic at all more interesting if you can how we got to be here, I don't know what it is, and this embraces all of that. My guest is John Lear, from Lear, Lear Jet Type Band, and he sure does have a lot to say about all of that, how we got here, who we are, how we're being manipulated, and during the break right now, this continuous nature of gravity. If we get element 115 and stabilize it, John, presumably we'd be on our way toward the kind of travel that you were talking about a little while ago, wouldn't we? Well, that's pretty much impossible, but even if we had it and we could stabilize it, then we have to make a container to contain the battery from which they draw the heat and turn it into positive, turn into voltage. Right. And making the container would be some more problem. We're talking, something that's 100,000 years ahead of us. All right. Something 100,000 years ahead of us. They say dead by then. They say crashed at Aztec, right? Right. One of them crashed. And how much do you know about that? I know don't know. Apparently just passed away, and he was the last living witness to the crash. The only one we know was that it had said anything, and now Bill Simon wrote UFO Crash at Aztec, and that came out about maybe 15 years ago, and he did a thorough, extremely thorough investigation of the crash at Aztec, which occurred in 1948. And that was the one that Frank Scully talked about and got so ridiculed over. And I read Simon's book, and very interesting, and I drove to Aztec myself and looked for Earth Canyon, and I didn't find it at that time. But then about 7 or 8 years ago, when I got into mining, there was an old gold miner that did assays out of town, Doug Owen. And I went to his house to get some assays of some of the ore up at the mine. And he was, let's see, at that time he had to be 72 or 73. And after visiting him for 2 or 3 times, he said, we were sitting at the kitchen table, he said, John, I've never told anybody this, he said, because it was sworn to secrecy, but I know you do a little lecturing on UFOs, and I just wanted to tell you, I was there at what they call the crash at Aztec, and I said, really? And I said, tell me about it. He said, I work for Alpha Natural Gas. He said, we were laying a trench in Largo Canyon, and he said, there was 5 of us. And he said, this flying saucer came in, zoomed across over our heads, and crashed maybe a couple hundred away from us. And he said, we all walked over there. And he said it was 5 hours before the military got there, so we had enough time to look at everything and see the whole thing. He said there was a hole in the porthole. He said it was about the size of a $50. He said we looked in there, and there was kind of a little console, and 2 of the bodies were leaning over the console, charged, just laying there. I said, what size were they? And he said, about 3 feet. I said, what did they look like? He said, exactly like us. And I said, what color were they? And he said, well, they were burned. They were a chocolate brown burn color.
And he said we spent a lot of time, he said, looking in there. He said we went and got an acetylene torch to see if we could make that hole bigger to get inside the thing. But he said the acetylene torch for 10 minutes on that thing didn't even make it warm.
Going back exactly like us, but no than 3 feet tall. Otherwise, just an absolute reduction of all features.
Right.
That's all.
Right, and that would match up with a story we heard that some witness saw somebody fitting that exact type description was in a pine gap and a hanger there. So anyway, apparently the military gets there after about 5 hours, hurls them all into a corner of the field, gives them the briefing, you kill anybody, we won't kill you, we'll kill your wife, your kids, your dog, your parents, everybody. So that makes an impression because usually people don't care. Okay, kill me, go ahead, kill me. But when they try, oh no, we're not going to kill you, we're going to kill everybody else. Right? So they watched him take this thing apart. I said, well, how'd they do it? He said they borrowed some of our, he had a name for it. It might have been a welding rod or something to make a long, maybe 12-foot long, kind of a poker. And he said they put it into the hole in the window and they knew exactly where to push. And when they did, he said, John, the thing opened up just like the craft in the day years stood still. The bottom came out and a pie section raised. He said they went in, they took the bodies out. He said then we watched them disassemble this thing. And he said it disassembled in pie sections. And apparently they knew exactly how to do it.
So they had, this was obviously not their first crash retrieval.
Obviously.
And
so Doug told me the story, and I had him read Simon's book, and he made a few corrections in Simon's book. There's a story about helicopters coming in and flying overhead. He said, no, there were no helicopters. And he also had a comment. Simon said that they used something else to poke the lever that made the door come open. And Doug says, no, that was whatever it was, welding rod or something.
John, your dad, what was his attitude about all of this? I've heard stories. What was your dad? Because obviously your dad would have influenced you.
Apparently, he was a lot more involved than I realized. And like I say, I thought it was interesting, but I never got involved until I got off his book in 84, 85. Growing up, Dad used to talk about it a lot. Yes, they're here. Yeah, he's been coming to pick me up. And he had a friend, a TWA pilot named Bob Addix. I'm not sure. I think Bob passed away a couple of years ago. But he was the TWA pilot that saw the giant wheel come by his airplane spinning like a Ferris wheel, but faster, and zoomed by. And we had people around the house that turned out they were all involved. For instance, Jimmy Doolittle was always there. I was going to look up for the show that who was the head of the CIA, who was the MJ-12 guy.
Oh,
Not me either. Like Spike says, a fantastic form. My mind is like Teflon, nothing sticks.
something quantum.
But anyway, that guy, and I'll remember his name in a second, had a crush on my mom, and she told me that in later years. But all those guys, like Randy Lovelace, he was always around. So apparently my dad was very involved. Now there's a videotape floating around of my dad, I think we covered this last time, at the Boston Laboratories, and doing some kind of UFO project. There's a picture of my dad standing at a blackboard with a picture of a saucer there explaining how it worked. My mom is standing behind him. This has to be like 1954, 1955. And then recently on the internet, I came across a site that has information on the T. Townsend Brown Bonson connection. Now, they don't say anything about my dad, but there's a picture of my dad at the Bonson Laboratories doing the research. So, for all I know, maybe T. Townsend Brown was there and they were all doing something together. But the answer to your question, yes, he was involved. Yes, he did influence me, but he never told me the slightest bit of inside information.
But you think he knew a whole lot more than?
Oh yeah, yeah, he did.
With regard to the MJ-12 documents, they were, in fact, there were all kinds of references actually from the government indicating that, there really was something to those documents. I got a call from somebody recently who made a couple of notations to me that showed that there really had been a full investigative, that really had gone through our government. The whole mess had. And this is a very sensible person who believes they're absolutely real as well.
Yeah, I think the Robert Cutler document was a good proof of that. And that was the only document that's ever surfaced that actually had special studies group, and I think it mentioned MJ-12, whatever it was. That was a
And you think that organization is alive, well, and still pulling the strings today?
that organization or something very, very similar to it.
Very much like it. And of course, you gave the Lear test, which describes why there won't be disclosure. But perhaps within the plan somewhere, John, if the petri dish isn't empty, maybe it's at some point there is a plan for disclosure. Do you think that's possible?
Absolutely.
Not by, and I mean not by us.
Yeah, it's possible. How would I know? But my feeling is no. For the experiment to be valid, we can't know this is going
on. So then we're trapped on Earth. Well, we can't. They're not going to let us go anywhere.
That's what I think.
That must be an incredibly. If the astronauts that do know this must. I just can't even imagine how they handle it.
That's why they're such heroes, because they have handled it. And they've remained above the fray, and they've honored the code, and they've done their duty. And
but not without a price.
Oh yeah,
not without a big price. Somebody sent me an email that I want to read to you and see if you have a response to it. Abductions occur on a daily basis throughout the United States to at least 10% of the population. That was said by a quote from Lear. This person says, to the man, 10% of the current U.S. population is about 28 million. If that many have been abducted over the past 50 years, it comes to 560,000 per year on average. That averages to 46,666 per month, which comes to about 1,555 a day. And none of them raise a red flag anywhere. Are there 1,555 cracks taking one person each day for a period of 50 years? Nobody noticed?
yes.
Yes.
You can't see them. When that gravity envelope when that gravity envelope is around the craft, you can't see it. And usually they come at night. Abductions invariably occur between 2 and 5 in the morning.
Would be your view that these abductions are just a way of monitoring progress or lack of it or something or other with regard to the overall experiment?
They pick up children at the age of between 3 and 4, that's the first sign, and then between 6 and 7 is the second time, then one more time about 13, and then that's it. And then abductions that occur after that are for different reasons, and I don't know what those reasons are, but that's basically when abductions occur.
Well, do you know what the reasons are with regard to the abductions that occur at those?
Just monitoring, checking, it's a monitor check type deal. The children are, fully conscious. They enjoy the experience. They think it's neat going to the moon. They're, told this and that. And, it's a matter of fact deal.
And the other inexplicable things we have, like, well, abductions and then, crop circles and animal mutilations. The animal mutilations, I would presume, same motives?
No, I don't know too much about that. When I first got into this, Linda Howe did that excellent video.
Oh, yes.
What was it called?
Oh,
There you go, Spike. This is my Teflon 9 again. Alien Harvest.
Alien Harvest, yeah, of course.
Excellent. And scary, too. And an interesting thing, when Linda and I hooked up in Albuquerque, we drove down to see Clifford Stone. We took the exact road from Corona to the guy's ranch, to the road that goes over and picks up the road at Roswell. And we get halfway, and there was like 30 dead cows around there. And I couldn't believe it. Here I am with Linda now. We're in the middle of the desert.
I think I can recall her talking about that.
In the day.
Right in the middle of it, boom, she ran right into it. I think it was in that chance.
I'm looking around, I saw one or two, and then she stood up on the hood of the truck, and she says, there's got to be 3 of them here. And so we drove down the road, south on the road that went to, what's his name's ranch?
Braslin?
That's Mac Brown. And we go down maybe 10, 15 miles, and we went into a rancher, and we asked him if he knows anything about the dead cows. He said, yeah, they died of whatever it was, I forget. Linda knew what. So anyway, we go down to see Clifford Stone. She goes back home, I go back home, and she called later and she said, I checked with a veterinarian, and he said there's no possible way it could have been that disease, because he told me, the vet told me that there would have been a cordon around that place of 10 miles if that had been so. Now, let me make it clear that there were no typical animal mutilation type deals like eyeballs carved out, or they were just dead.
Well, that's a continuing gigantic mystery, as would be the crop circles. Obviously, some are hoax, and absolutely, obviously, many are not. Any thoughts on crop circles? I range from testing, space-based lasers and that sort of thing, to aliens myself, and my thinking, as most people think about this too, are just simply an anomaly of nature or some kind of message from the Earth itself. I don't know.
I don't even have a good theory, but all I remember about the crop circles is when Doug and Dave tried to say that they were responsible, and it was just so irritating to see a story picked up by the press, and and Valley who is, yeah, they admitted it, which didn't, apply to any other crop circles around the world, or if they have, they certainly made good time getting from country to country.
Well, when you talk about the press, I mean, that's a good subject all by itself too, John. I have never really had anybody approach me and said, you do one more show like the one you just did, whatever it was, and you or someone is toast. I've never been, no one's ever tried to affect me in that way. And so I've always wondered, everybody thinks there's a big conspiracy around the press. I don't know.
There's no conspiracy with the press. They just don't want to write or do anything with this subject, because they have to report to, whoever they work for. And that guy's going to say, hey, don't drop it. I'm not interested in it. And the only guy that we know that was on his way was George Ham. And until he got into so much trouble over, and I forget what it was, and now he doesn't mention very much about it at all.
He does not much anymore, does he?
No, I think Bob Stoldell said, look, you want to come back to work for Channel 8? I don't want to hear another friggin' thing about UFOs.
Well, they did actually, not too long ago, they did this thing on Inside Area 51. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw it. I was really disappointed. Oh, God, great. Here we are going to get to see it. Here we see, that, it's an old shot. Not an old shot.
I thought, when I saw the trailer, I thought, oh my God, they got cameras inside Area 51. And, I went out of my way to see it, and I too went, jeez. It was, well, how would you explain what they showed us? They showed us this sort of, I don't know, mock-up.
Yeah, it was a three-dimensional moving display of, a photograph.
What would it be like, I guess, something like that. Anyway, they didn't really have cameras in there. All right, we'll take Richard on the air and certainly calls for John Lear. I want to join us here, and we'll have plenty of it for your calls for John from our bell.
With Art Bell, call the wildcard line at area code 775-727-1295. The first-time caller line is area code 775-727-1222. To talk with Art Bell from East of the Rockies, call toll-free at 800-825-5033. From West of the Rockies, call Art at 800-618-55. International callers may reach Art Bell by calling your in-country free access number, pressing option 5, and dialing toll-free 800-893-0903. From coast to coast and worldwide on the internet, this is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
I kind of feel like this song. Who might have disagreed? Sweet dreams are made of this. Who might have disagreed? Really, who am I to disagree? That we're an experiment? That the moon was towed there for us? That on the moon there's a machine that trades or transmits and receives souls? Who am I to disagree? There's no absolute proof, but there are some pretty strong indications that something's on the moon that somebody doesn't really want to talk about. For me, that's indisputable. Seriously, let's play that song, Art. Everyone's going to the moon. John, welcome back.
Thanks. All right. I just want to mention all the guys at the Steady Team Art Bell wanted to say hello.
Oh, that's nice. Boy, you're all over the internet, aren't you?
And that boy at the Fantastic Forum came up with the name. Vandenberg was the guy that had the crush on my mom, BMJ-12. And he was always at the house.
Huh.
Well, there were a lot of those guys around there, all the time. I guess my dad was very, very involved.
Apparently so. Have you had an opportunity to go through his things, his belongings, the family heirlooms, all that sort of thing? Anything ever show up?
No, as you know, we didn't get along, and after he passed away, Mom donated everything to the Amish Museum in Dallas. And then they didn't do anything, so it was redonated to the Seattle Museum of Flight. And after she passed away, there was a few things left up there, but nothing that would have anything like that.
Can I ask you, we're going to go to calls here because a lot of people want to talk to you. And the last time you were on, I didn't really get the audience a chance. I hugged you. But it's a personal question, John. Thinking back, you had so much in common in so many ways. I mean, you had aircraft, love of aviation, even if you didn't know it at the time, your dad's interests. So much in common. Why didn't you get along?
Well, it just, the main thing that I can remember is he did not want me to be a pilot. And when I wanted to take flying lessons when I was 16, he had me out in the backyard on Saturday learning how to paint. And I even remember the guy's name, Sidney Nesbitt. And I had my easel there on the grass there to house the 321 Emerald Smith Palisades. And I had to spend all day mixing paint and painting on this piece of canvas.
Well, but most fathers would want their children to follow in their footsteps. Why would you think your dad
You would think so. I don't. But that's the way it was.
So, all right, here we go. First on caller line. Hi.
Look at your
Hello.
painting.
Hello.
Rabbit.
Hello. Hello, sir.
I think it is like.
Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, am I on?
Yes, you're on. So you should start from the beginning. It sounded like we joined you in mid-conversation or something.
Yeah, I was rehearsing.
You were rehearsing. You were rehearsing.
Because I have this interesting perspective of how to look at the instantaneousness of gravity.
All right, well, rehearsal's over.
Okay, it's a real thing right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think of it as being pervasive. It's like if you had the handle of a sword as a body, like any mass, like a planet, and the blade that extends from the handle would be like gravity. It's all there, right there. And you could move gravity, it would extend to the farthest reaches of the universe.
In other words, gravity is everywhere, always.
Right, gravity is everywhere, always. It's like that handle, but you can move gravity sideways. It's like if you move the handle of the sword, the blade would move from side to side, right? And that would be like the gravity. So you have all these, every little mass has its own pervasiveness of gravity.
All right. Well, this man obviously took my question to heart and thought hard about it. Does he have a grasp on the way you think of gravity, Joe?
No.
And then you make a shot at it, John. How, although we think of it as instantaneous, hard as that may be, how would you describe gravity?
It's instantaneous.
I got that. Is there anything else you could say about it that would help to understand the nature of it?
No, because I've been thinking about it for, since Bob told me about it, and I'm comfortable with it now. I understand it. But as far as explaining it, it's just something that will come to you if you think about it.
Well, I will now. You always leave me with these things to think about. Wildcard line, you're on there with John Lear. Hi. You are?
Okay, hi. I just have a quick question for John Lear. It's great to finally speak with you. Back when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, I always had a feeling that, these so-called aliens had something directly to do with the things that people experience when they have a near-death experience or, life after death. Because, people basically explain the same type of beings that either describe grays or beings of light. And even military personnel have described some beings of light, along with grays. And I was taking to heart what you said about what's going on the side of the moon. I think they do have something to do with the recycling of our souls. I think that on a level that we cannot comprehend with the human mind. And I think that our government knows that there's something about this, but they don't want to admit it because they don't want to give up the control that they have over people. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
John?
I don't understand the question.
Well,
I mean, do you agree with what I said?
I guess it was more of the same. He's saying that, yes, they control our souls, in fact, and that our government or some portion of it understands this, and they don't want us to know that because that would yield or it would eclipse their control over us.
Yeah, that's probably right.
That was a yes, Colin.
Great. Okay then.
All right, thank you very much for the call. Eastern Rockies, you're on there with John Lear. Hi.
Hey, Mike.
Hey there.
Yeah, I'm calling from Newport, Delaware.
Newport, Delaware. Welcome.
The DL.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's talking about the Earth being towed, right?
But no, there's the moon.
I mean, excuse me, the moon being towed. Was the Earth towed to?
I don't know.
If you think about it, Art, your chuckle gives it away.
I didn't chuckle.
Well, your chuckle is very funny, all right?
I'm glad you enjoy it, but on this occasion, I didn't chuckle.
You've been chuckling pretty much all through this interview.
Well, maybe I, in a way, I can't grasp all of this.
And you know what?
And wait a minute, let me finish. And I can't.
I'm on a 3 second delay, but go ahead.
No, you're not.
I'm listening to you on the radio on the
Well,
phone.
don't listen to me on the radio.
I've turned it down.
Turn it off. All the way off.
Okay, all the way off.
On the other hand, I don't reject it either. It's as plausible as other explanations for why we're here and what we're about. It is as plausible.
Ask your guess what religion he is. He an atheist or something?
Yes.
Okay.
John?
Mr. Lear. Are you there?
Does it matter?
Oh, of course it does.
Why?
What does a Christian and an atheist have in common? I don't think anything, except maybe different beliefs. And what you're believing in just doesn't make any sense to me, all right?
Well, you know what, sir?
And I don't know where he got his information from, Mr. Bell, but your chuckle definitely gives it away.
Well, then you misinterpreted my chuckle, which is what I was trying to
Matter of fact, hey, Art, I read about you in the paper just the other day.
Did you?
Yeah, and it's funny, in Delaware, they would print up something about you, and the sad part about it wasn't really about you, it was about your son.
Yeah, I'm very well aware of the story, so what?
I mean, why don't they print something nice about you instead of your family?
I don't know, because they're the press. Why do you think? That's what they do. No, John, if somebody were to come on the air and tell a story about tablets magically being burned in stone, about oceans being parted as the hands were raised into the air, about the earth being created in 6 days and resting on days. If these stories were told, they wouldn't sound any wilder, any more over the top than what you've been telling us about what could be our creation. No, they would be just as unbelievable and hard to grasp as everything that you've been, maybe in a contemporary sense, what you've been saying is in a way more logical and easy to grasp than the story as it came from the Bible. So if you hear me chuckle, it's not laughing at anything John is saying. It's probably more sort of a nervous chuckle myself when I realize that this is as easy as anything else. West of the Rockies, you're on there with John Lear and Art Bell. Hi.
Yes, Ken here in Miriam.
Hey there.
Just for the record, I've probably heard more programs on Coast to Coast than any of your listeners, for whatever that's worth. Now, that gives you my background. Now, there is a video that has been published or run in Canada and then Japan, which I have copies of, called The Dark Side of the Moon. Now, it's an incredible video which shows Kissinger, Don Rumsfeld, who was Secretary of Defense some 30 years ago, whatever, head of NASA, on and on, plotting this concept of making the movie with Stanley Kubrick and all that. And it proves without doubt it was fabricated in case it didn't pull off. Now, I know this sounds fantastic, but I've got the video. They're publishing it elsewhere. I would love to send it to you for your observation and look it over. Now, Dory seems to be resistant to look at it, even asked one to see it. I can probably see why, but because he thinks we went. Now, did you know the movie, the video I'm talking about?
I think he does, and if he doesn't, I do. John, you know, okay, John, there is a whole copy of people, I mean, quite a large number of people, actually, who don't think that we ever went to the moon, and they will cite a sort of a long litany and list of evidence, that will, the spacesuit could not have managed to fit through this portal, or the flag didn't wave right, or any one of zillions of things. They'll say they would have died in the radiation belt, in the radiation belt. All kinds of things they say. They're trying to say that we did not go to the moon. And I'm sure you've heard some of that. So do you buy into any of it?
No, I think I can understand where the problem arises, because some of the footage certainly was fake for various reasons. But they did go to the moon. There's no doubt in my mind.
The place that you begin to differ is with respect to what they saw when they got there.
That's right.
Do you suppose, John, that there was knowledge of what was on the moon before the astronauts reached the moon?
Yes, because what happened is when they sent the first ships there, they couldn't get it right. They either missed it or they crashed in the moon. And the reason is because they didn't realize the true gravity of the moon. Everybody accepts that it's 1/6 that of Earth, but it's not. It's 64%. And when they got that right, then they started getting everything the rest right. But the thing is, they couldn't tell that to the public. The fact that it has only 64% instead of 1/6 is the reason when you saw pictures of the astronauts jumping, they could at best do a foot, maybe 18 inches. But and when they went on walks, they were just simply tired, like that equipment, because essentially more than half the gravity of Earth. And there is an atmosphere on the moon. It's equal to about 18,000 feet on Earth. As a matter of fact, they could have taken off their helmets and breathed for a little while.
Oh my God. I've never heard that before. Certainly we cannot see any atmosphere on the moon, can we?
From Earth?
Yeah. Oh, well. Through very large telescopes. I mean, I've never seen anything depicting what seemed to be even anything remotely, foggy or.
Well, there's certainly clouds up there, and I don't know whether you had a telescope powerful enough to see it.
There's clouds on the or above the moon. Yeah. That's a pretty hard concept, John. There's an atmosphere on the moon, which includes sufficient to create clouds.
What I refer you to and what my favorite photograph is, and what I have hanging behind me in the form of, I think it's a format of, it must be more than 16 by 20. It's about 2 feet by 2 feet. But I purchased Lunar Orbiter 2 162H, which was a photo of Copernicus. It's taken in a oblique angle, and you're looking directly at the inside of the craters of Copernicus. And it was so neat because it was the first photo that I got that essentially was unretouched for this reason. When NASA started retouching photos in 1967 to eliminate all the offending material, what they do is they take a picture of that, and then that would be the photo that they hand out to the public. But he escaped attention. But what didn't escape attention was NASA in 1967 never realized or couldn't conceive that in 1995 and in 2000 that we would have computers that could take a negative or an actual photograph and digitize it and enlarge it to something they had no idea. So these days we can take negatives that they thought were safe of offending material and enlarge it and see all kinds of wonderful things now on the side of this photo, the Neurobic 2162H. There are a number of silos which obviously contain vapor. And in some of them, the vapor is going up, and some of them, the vapor is going down. Now, you have to have atmosphere to have vapor. And also, on one of those cliffs is what we call the parking garage. And I can find it here. What I'm going to do is read you Bob Lazar's statement, which I have signed, and it's dated August 23rd, 1996.
This is Bob Lazar?
Yes.
Okay.
And when I first started to bring to his attention all this stuff on the moon, he wrote this statement that says, I, Bob Lazar, promise to kill myself if any of John's moon stuff is true. I, Bob Lazar, August 23rd, 1996. Okay, now, here's his statement on August 5th, 1998, after showing him the parking garage on the top of Copernicus. It's a I'm just kidding, it's a three-story, it looks like a three-story building with a ramp on the side of it. Okay, but he says, I, Bob, and this is August 5th, 1998, about 2 years later, I, Bob Lazar, in return for not having to honor my commitment to kill myself if any of John's moon stuff was true, can freely admit that the object in the crate of Copernicus on the moon, saved in its apple crate, is a box which I don't know what is doing there. Signed, Bob Lazar.
Oh, John, you really have those two good documents from Bob.
Right.
Bob, of course, I've interviewed now many times.
I don't be skeptic of all skeptics.
Well, yeah, so he is.
He's not going to believe something unless it's hands on. And that's why last time you interviewed him, he said, I think John Lear is crazy, but unfortunately, some of his stuff is crazy enough to be true.
Well, when you ask him about aliens, he'll say, never saw one. When you ask him about anything alien related, sorry, don't know anything about it, never saw it, can't tell you anything about it. Of course, he did see all those alien craft up in Area 51, but anything he didn't see with his own eyes or touch, he would have anything to do with it. I'd love to have copies of those.
Sure.
Hold on, we're at the top of the hour. I guess it's John Lear. I had no idea those documents existed.